If you have joint pain when squatting, especially knee pain, it blows my mind that one solution given is just simply to avoid squats. If you get in and out of a car, stand up and sit down in a chair, or use the bathroom, you are squatting. As a physical therapist, I am here to bring you good news. You can feel good squatting again, and it can make your daily life so much easier. In this video, I have put together my top 10 favorite squat variations, because in order to get better at squats, you may have to change things up a bit at first, make it easier on the joints, and there are tons of ways to do it. I have included a scale from beginner to advanced, and with this scale, you will be able to find what variation works best for you no matter what level you're at. You will also get to see what you're working towards. So let's get started. If you have a pool, take a look at this next video. If you don't, feel free to skip to exercise number 2. A great place to work on squats, especially if they are painful. You can do this in a couple of different positions. You can hold on to the pool wall with both hands. You can hold on with one, or you can lose support altogether. It really depends on how squats feel for you. I want you to think about there's a chair behind you and you are sitting in that chair. I can only go down so low. I do have a microphone here that we do not want to get wet, but you can essentially go down as far as you feel comfortable with. And I want you to think about sitting back. That's why I do like both hands on the pool wall, as you have more of a natural inclination to want to sit backwards. Stand up and straighten both knees. If you want to lose support, keep your hands in front of you, sit back. You can submerge your hands if you want to, whatever feels most comfortable, but we are looking at 10 to 20 repetitions, really focusing on strengthening those thighs and glute muscles. When I was a home care physical therapist, I used this variation so often for people who were simply afraid of squats, had a lot of knee, hip, or even back pain, and had limited mobility in any of those joints. What you're going to do is hook your hands on the sink itself. Stand a distance away where your arm can be straight. You don't want to be right up against the sink. Using your arms to anchor you, sit your hips back. Notice how far my hips are behind my heels. This helps to be nice to the knees. Sit down and stand up. Your knees are not moving any closer to the cabinets or anything in front of you. Reach your hips back. Sit down as far as you feel comfortable. If you're in a gym, there are lots of options for you to do this supported squat. You can use a set of rings or handles, something that you're able to hold onto and then sit back on. For this variation, we're looking for 10 up to 20 repetitions, depending on how hard this feels for you. Aiming for 2 to 3 sets. For exercise number 3, we're going to be using a chair and a loop resistance band. Now there are 2 options here. You can use this latexy plastic one. Sometimes you will have difficulty with these rolling up, so there is also a cotton option. I'm going to show you with this yellow band here. Bring this band up around the knees, preferably right on top of the knees, just like this. Sit towards the edge of the chair. Bend your knees to about 90 degrees, a little bit further back if you can get there. You're going to stand up, but as you stand up, press your knees out against the band. Press out and do the same thing as you sit down. Keep your full foot on the floor. Don't allow your feet to roll to the sides. Press up and press out as you sit down. This exercise is particularly helpful if you experience pain on the inside of your knees when you stand up or sit down. It also can be helpful in recruiting those hip muscles, strengthening them to help support both the hips and the knees. And if you have a pinching or pain or stiffness in the front of your hip, this can be a great option. We are looking for 2 to 3 sets here, about 8 to 12 repetitions. For exercise number 4, you're going to need something that you can elevate your heels with. Now, my favorite way to do this is use a dumbbell that has flat parts. Try not to use a dumbbell that is a circle head like this, as this will be unsafe. Place 2 dumbbells on the ground, just a couple of inches between each other. Then place your heels right on top of these dumbbells. You're going to sit down and stand up. This is a heel elevated squat. This places more emphasis on the thighs, but is nicer to the knees. This is perfect if you have stiff or painful ankles, are dealing with some low back stiffness or tightness, or you have knee pain standing up or sitting down in a chair. For this exercise, we're looking for 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions. Modify the squat depth as needed based on your knee mobility, and only go down as far as is comfortable. For this next variation, we are going into a sumo squat, which essentially is a squat with a wider foot stance. If you have the hip mobility that allows your feet to get outside of your hips, meaning you don't have a lot of inner thigh tightness, but you have kneecap pain or even pain below the kneecap, you're looking to prioritize hip strengthening, or perhaps have some lower back stiffness, this exercise can be very beneficial. Take your legs essentially as wide as you can feel comfortable. You can also play with your foot position. Some people are going to feel really good keeping their feet pointed forwards. Others are going to feel better by turning their toes out just a tad. Reach your hips back, sit down, and stand up. You're keeping an upright torso here, bending at the knees and sitting your hips back. As you stand up, you're using those inner thighs, using those glutes to help push you into standing. Go down as far as your hip mobility and your knee mobility allow. This wider stance can help to take some stress off of the knees and put more stress into the hips. Make those hips work and help to build that muscle strength. We're looking for 15 to 20 repetitions here for 2 to 3 sets. For this next squat variation, I want you to make sure that you feel confident without weight first. Once you do build that confidence, you can either use a kettlebell or a regular dumbbell. I'll show you with a regular dumbbell first. Find a chair, scoot to the edge, take the weight and hold it very close near your chest. We don't want it out here. We want it nice and close. As you stand up, you're going to keep it in the same position. Now with the kettlebell, it's going to be a bit different as far as how to hold it. You can hold it here right at the handles, or you can flip it upside down and hold it just like this. Honestly, whatever is most comfortable for you. From here, you're simply keeping your chest up nice and tall, standing up, and sitting down. This is a great way to make squats more challenging. If you are in a gym, you can also just use a weight bench or a box, something you feel comfortable sitting down to and standing up from. I do like to keep the chair involved as it makes sure that you're keeping appropriate form. Of course, once you feel more confident, you can move away from the chair as well. Since we are adding weight and it is getting a little bit more challenging, you can shoot for 8 to 10 repetitions for 2 to 3 sets. Modify the repetitions and the sets based on how heavy the weight feels. This next squat variation is perfect if you have knee pain when you're squatting down without a chair, if you have stiff ankles, or just experience difficulty, especially with balance, bending down. I have a band that's hooked inside of the door here. Essentially what I did was take this long band, tie it in a knot, and then shut it in the jamb of the door. You want to make sure that this door is not going to open on you as well. Once you have your band secured inside of the door, put each leg inside of the band so that the band is right behind your knees. Then take a step out where you feel some resistance in the band. Press your knees against the band to get them nice and straight. Think about using the band to sit back and stand up. Notice my knees aren't moving forward here. I'm bringing my hips back, which tends to take some stress away from the knees. Sit your hips back and stand up. Now, if you don't have a door that you can do this in, you can tie it around a stable surface. You can also do this same thing in a gym by just tying the band or looping the band around a surface that obviously is stable and is not going to move. You can also add weight to this to make it more challenging once you feel comfortable with this body weight. When we're thinking about repetitions, again, it's if you are using weight, err a little on the lighter side. And if you're just going body weight, you may be able to do just a few more repetitions. We're looking anywhere from 5 to 12 repetitions for 2 to 3 sets. One of my absolute favorite variations of a squat is the modified single leg squat. I like to start with a chair. You can, of course, progress away from it, but right now it's all about mastering form. Typically, I set it up where you have one leg that's extended and the other leg is bent behind. With this squat, it's essentially what it sounds like, a modified single leg squat. So now we are hyper focusing on one leg at a time because so many people have asymmetrical strength. One leg is stronger than the other. When you have asymmetrical strength, it can lead to compensations, pain, and put you more at risk for injury. So this helps you to address that. I'm working the leg that's in the back. Find a comfortable position, sit at the edge of the chair. You're simply going to keep your legs in this same position and stand up and sit down. You can manipulate the difficulty of this exercise pretty easily by just moving this forward foot. The further it is out in front, the harder this will be because you're putting more weight on this back leg. To make it easier, you can slide this foot closer, so now it's offering more of a kickstand. Aiming for 8 to 12 repetitions on one side, and then you will switch and complete on the other side. For the same amount of repetitions, trying for 2 to 3 sets each side. To continue to increase the difficulty of a squat, you can continue to add more weight. There are quite a few options as far as adding weight to squats is concerned. If you want to do this at home, you can very easily use a chair. You can take 1 or 2 dumbbells. I will show you with 2. I like to hold them up at my shoulders and just allow them to rest there. That way, when I stand up, I keep my chest nice and tall. And when I sit down, again, that chest stays tall. You can also do this in a gym in a variety of different ways. One of them being find a bench that you can use and use weight on your back, a back squat or a barbell back squat. I do like to use a bench here, again, just to make sure that form stays appropriate and minimize the risk for errors. You are just lightly touching the surface as you sit down and then standing up and nice and controlled. No matter what way you choose to do a weighted squat, the repetitions are going to depend on how heavy the weight feels. If you think about it in a range of maybe 5 to 10 repetitions, 2 to 4 sets. If I am using a weight, and the first 3 repetitions feel pretty good, but then by that 4th repetition, it really starts to get hard. Then you can aim for 2 or 3 more repetitions. If you can easily do 10 repetitions, no problem, that may indicate it's time to increase weight. There's a lot of flexibility when you start adding weight to squats. The key is just making sure that they feel challenging and are at the appropriate intensity for you so you can maintain good form. Now, this squat variation is going to look a bit different. It actually emulates a lunge, and it's called a split squat. To move to this, you must feel confident with that modified single leg squat first, as this is going to require a degree of single leg strength to maintain the appropriate form. I like to use something to hold on to. You don't necessarily have to, but if this is the first time you are trying this, I would use something here again just to minimize the risk for errors. One foot is in front of the other in a range of motion that feels good. If you are limited in, say, hip mobility, you may need to move your feet closer. I like to lift my back heel up. You do not have to if you have the appropriate ankle mobility. As you're moving down into this motion, it may feel better if your heel is off the floor. You're going to think about bending both knees, keeping your chest up tall, and then coming back up. It's not a lunge where you're moving your feet. Your feet are staying in the same position. Down and up, down and up. It's not so much moving forward. You're thinking about just moving up and down instead of forwards and backwards. Bending this knee, and then as you stand up, you're focusing on getting it as straight as you can. Think about keeping most of your weight in this front leg. This back leg is here for a little bit of support and stability, but the primary focus is on this front leg. Then you will switch sides and do the exact same thing. If it starts to feel awkward or if it feels like you really have to move forwards, odds are your feet might be too close and you might need to widen your stance. You can also very easily add weight to this. Once you master body weight, you can take 2 dumbbells, you can also hold a kettlebell, get into position, come down, and stand up. Bend that front knee and then press away to straighten it. Repetitions again are going to depend on how hard this feels. If you are using weights, you may want to err on the lower side of repetitions, maybe 5 or 8 repetitions each side. If you are just doing body weight here, you may be able to do 5 to 12 repetitions. Again, depending on how difficult this movement feels for you. Squats are a vital part of everyday life. This is something I would be practicing at least every other day, if not every day. The goal is to choose the squat variation that feels good and feels challenging right now. Get really good at that and then keep progressing. If you're finding that knee stiffness or knee mobility is holding you back from trying a couple of these variations, I would highly recommend going to this video next. It details some of the best stretches for knees, whether you have arthritis or not. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get updates when I release new videos.